Welcome into a Thursday edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We are streaming live over on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, looking for your inbox questions. And as always, and if you want to answer the question that is the title of our show, which player saw their stock rise the most this year, you can do that over in the YouTube. The show is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app, use the code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary. From at Bet365, Tyler Yaremchuk and Carter Hutton getting the start on back-to-back days, Huts.
Back to back. This is rare for me, Ty. I think I did it maybe 2 or 3 times in my career, if you can believe it. And I always felt the second day was a little easier. I was already in the routine, so hopefully it goes smooth like my playing days.
I was going to say, like, outsider media perspective, we always go like, oh, you can never start a guy back-to-back days. Is that something we make too big of a deal of? Like you just kind of said, a little easier?
I think so. Honestly, I found it easier, especially, well, maybe I guess on the air side, if the first night didn't go very well, the second night was a little trickier. But usually if the first night didn't go well, you weren't getting the start on the back-to-back. What I found was I was already in a rhythm. My eyes were connected. I was tracking the puck well. So other than that, just making sure I could get through the third period. Because let me tell you, I wasn't always the genetic freak in the net. I had to get by with what I had, and I put a lot of effort into playing.
Fair. All right, we got a lot to get to today. First off, let's kick it off with the Nightcap. It's brought to you by JP Wiser's, proud to be the official whiskey of the NHL, offering Canadian hockey fans a premium drink choice to enhance every game night experience across the country. JP Wiser's, the official whiskey of game night. And I'm just looking over in the YouTube chat. I think we might be having a little bit of a data problem with YouTube. So if you're watching there and your internet or something is lagging, go over to the Twitter. Everything's usually fine over on x.com. But the Nightcap from last night, let's start out with the game between the Minnesota Wild and the San Jose Sharks. Storylines aplenty in a game that featured 15 goals. And usually if you're talking about a game that features 15 goals, you don't kick it off by talking about the goaltending, but a cool moment with Marc-Andre Fleury, Huts, having his kids on the ice for his last start on home ice.
Yeah, really cool. Obviously a great experience. And to cap it all off, think of all the games he's played in and how many nights he's had great nights. To give up 7, but to stay in it the whole game and find a way to win that game just goes to show you, it doesn't matter how many you give up, just making a few saves at the right time, they end up coming back in that game. And an exciting time at home ice. Obviously a legend. We've seen so many great things with the Ovechkin, with Sidney Crosby, what he's done this year, and another legend in Marc-Andre Fleury. But that being back, the Minnesota Wild getting Kirill, Kaprizov back, Joel Eriksson combining for 6 goals. Unbelievable. And I think this is a shot in the arm this Minnesota Wild team needs. And looking at in the standings, I think there's still a team that is to be reckoned with these 2 guys back and Philip Gustafsson, what he brings to the table come playoff time.
Well, yeah, everything was just so quiet around those two on the injury front for a while, and we weren't getting a lot of updates. And it was like, okay, we're getting close to the end of the regular season here, and it's not like these were guys who had missed Eriksson and Kaprizov, that had missed a week or 2 weeks or even 3 weeks. Like, they had been out for a pretty long time. And for me, at least, I was sitting there looking at Minnesota going, okay, even if you get these guys back for the start of the playoffs, how good are they going to be? Are they coming back at 90% just because it's the playoffs? The fact that now, not only have you seen them in a regular season game and they're going to get 3 more to kind of really get up to speed before the playoffs. I laugh saying get up to speed because, yeah, they combined for 6 goals last night. Like, it totally changes the outlook on this Minnesota team, having your 2 best players not only back in the lineup, but proving that there is just no rust.
Right. And we see that all the time, or how important slotting is too. Getting these guys back that are going to play tougher minutes against different opponents. And you have guys trying to overextend to fill these gaps that just don't have the skill set that these 2 players bring to the table. And that being said, KK97 is a star, right? He is a guy that was going to be in the argument for the Hart conversation if he stayed healthy, but he didn't. So that's something they can't control, but he's back now. And again, I think I don't want to judge based off this game because this was the San Jose Sharks. And there was a lot to go off of them, for Macklin Celebrini the night he had, Will Smith. I think if you're a Sharks fan, they're in a good place, right? There's a lot to go off. Askarov is coming. You have a goalie of the future. There's value there. But for the Minnesota Wild, getting in the playoffs with these 2 players, where they're at, the cap relief they're going to get next year with that money coming off, there's a lot to go off of in Minnesota. And I think Philip Gustafsson is someone to build around with Kaprizov. Things are exciting. And again, you get in the playoffs, you have a chip in a chair. Who knows what happens?
Yeah, man, you mentioned Smith and Celebrini. They combined for 9 points in that hockey game. Ek and Kaprizov combining for another 7. The Stars were out last night, and Minnesota takes a big, big step towards confirming and locking up their spot in the playoffs. And the second part of that conversation is the Calgary Flames. They flat out blew it. They were up 3-1 late in that game against the Anaheim Ducks, a team that they absolutely had to get the full 2 points against. They end up giving up 2 goals late in the third period in a span of 8 seconds, and then Cutter Gauthier scores his second of the game, his fourth in his last 2 games as well. And the Ducks steal a big point from Calgary. And now, if you're the Flames, you sit there. You are 5 points back of the St. Louis Blues, 5 points back of the Minnesota Wild. And yes, you have 2 games in hand on St. Louis, 1 game in hand on Minnesota. But the way those teams are running right now, I don't think Calgary's going to be able to catch them. Like, again, you could draw a path if they had gotten 2 points last night and said, okay, they're 4 points back of St. Louis with 2 games in hand. Like, there's still that little bit of you almost control your own destiny. Now, Flames are done.
Yeah, the Flames are done. And again, you look back to that Vegas overtime loss on a bad bounce. You look back to last night blowing that lead. Again, there's so many good things to go off for this Calgary Flames team. I think there's things to build off. But that being said, on top of this run by the St. Louis Blues that I don't think anyone really seen coming, winning 12 straight, it's a tough one last night to swallow. I think if you're a Calgary fan, that's a tough pill to swallow. But if you're an Anaheim Ducks fan, I think there's a lot of hype and there's some good things to move forward with. Cutter Gauthier has found his own. It's probably something that the Philadelphia Flyers don't like to see too much right now. Seeing his success, Lucas Dostal, what he's been able to do in the crease consistently. So there's a lot of excitement, I think, in Anaheim. But for the Calgary Flames, there's things to build off here. And again, moving forward, Dustin Wolf has burst onto the scene, and we're not far removed from him being in the American League consistently good all the time. There was always that hesitation of if he could make the jump. But that being said, they have their goalie of the future. They have some key pieces to build around. So I think moving into next year, there's going to be a lot to go off for this Calgary Flames team.
Yeah, that's fair. Speaking of next year, that is where the Utah Hockey Club is looking now. They were kind of that sexy playoff pick this year. Everyone was looking at them going, oh, maybe they surprised their first year in a new city. And listen, it wasn't a bad year by any stretch. They pick up 84 points. I mean, they're going to finish 10 to 12 points out of a playoff spot. But it's a really interesting team heading into the summer. Before we maybe look at the summer, Huts, what was this group missing this year? Like, to me, they battled a little bit of health problems. Their blue line was so banged up for a little bit. They missed a guy like Dylan Guenther for a while, and I think he's blossoming into being a true star in this league. But I think they're just almost missing a little bit more scoring up front. You can see here 21st in goals per game.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest hole in this lineup, right? Like Clayton Keller, again, has a great year, but again, I think he is a player that would complement someone who could be more of a finisher. And I think Gunther is going to settle into that. He's got 26 goals, but he missed some time as well. So when I look at this lineup, I feel like they've accumulated a lot of draft picks moving forward. I think Armstrong does a great job when he's with the Coyotes and now bring this over to Utah to really build a good base here. But they still need to make a splash. I feel like they're at a point now where they have their base, they have the future. Let's build on that. And again, I think Connor Ingram being hurt this year didn't help, and then him stepping away from the team. Vejmelka played very well this year, and he was rewarded with a great contract. But when I look down those stats, he's played, I don't even know how many games it is straight here. I lost count. I ran out of fingers, Ty. It's been like 15, 20 games straight he's playing, and it's really hard to stretch a guy that thin, right? He is a great goalie, but that being said, you need a little relief. And you look at that little run they had where they dropped 3 straight, they dropped 4 and 5. It's tough to really keep pace when you look at teams like St. Louis winning streaks and what's gone on. So a little too late, but moving forward, I love to see them try to make a splash in free agency here to get someone or trade off some of those picks to bring someone in to help this group.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right at the end there. Like, they have $21.5 million in cap space this summer, and that is with 11 forwards, 6 defensemen, and 2 goalies already locked up. So if they want to go spend on the higher end of free agency, they absolutely can. And I know everyone draws a line to a guy like Mitch Marner, and, would Marner go to Utah? I don't know. To me, one player who I'd love to see him maybe back up the Brinks truck for is Sam Bennett in Florida. Like, you have so much of this good young skill here. You talk about Keller, who I know is now 26, but you keep kind of going down the line of the Logan Coolies, the Dylan Gunthers, Tisha Ginla's coming up through their system. And it's like, hey, I think you have so much skill here. Why not bring in a guy who just absolutely plays the right way in Bennett and can kind of lead by example with this group?
Yeah, I think that's important too. I look at some of these teams and matchups, and again, I touch on it a lot, like where it's like you need to win a certain way during the regular season. In a NHL now where speed and skill is everybody have it, what else can you bring to the table? And you talk about grit, you talk about playing the right way. And again, like a Matthew Nyes type of player, how well he's fit, like around the net. And look at him last night with his hat trick and what he brings to the Toronto Maple Leafs, where adding Sam Bennett, adding those Brad Marchands to Chucks, those players that come playoff time, that's the ultimate goal. You're going to need a little sandpaper in your lineup. And I think Bill Armstrong is aware of that, the way he is a GM. I got a chance to know him very well when I was in Arizona. So I look for this team to do this with this new ownership group. I feel like he's got free range to try to make this team a winner, and I look for him to make a splash.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of prospects, a lot of picks, a lot of cap space. That is a good recipe heading into the offseason for Utah. Moving off of that, Huts, our big question for the day, the title of the show: which players have seen their stock rise the most this season? And hey, maybe one of those guys is Dylan Guenther, who only played in 66 games, but is still right on the cusp of being a 30-goal scorer. But there were a couple of other guys I wanted to focus on here. One, maybe a bit of an obvious one considering the heater he's currently on, but that's Nick Suzuki. This is a guy in Montreal who I think has kind of taken that step of like, okay, is he a true number one center, or is he going to be one of those guys that maybe fits in more as like a really good number two center? And I think what we've seen here, especially in the back half of the season, is Nick Suzuki, offensively, defensively, whatever way, he is a guy who is a legit bona fide 1A number one center.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And I think the fact of the matter is for Nick Suzuki, how he's identified himself on the other side of the puck. And again, I think that you talk about the relationship with Martin St. Louis and where he's at and being a true pro. It's hard to have success in this league over a long career. And Martin St. Louis knows the ins and out of doing that. And then when you look at the East, look at the Barkovs, you look at the Matthews, guys know how to play on the other side of the puck. Nick Suzuki is that guy now. And it seems like every night over this run, he's on the score sheet. He's finding a way to impact games. He's playing valuable minutes as the captain, as the leader. And I think he's a big reason why we're even talking about Montreal being in this playoff position that they are in.
Yeah, the other guy I have here is Jesper Bratt, and there's an interesting comment in our YouTube right off the jump from J-Rock who answered the question with a guy like Jacob Slavin. And with Slavin, I think anyone who's kind of keeping an eye on the league knows how truly elite Jacob Slavin has been for the last number of years. With a guy like Jesper Bratt, and hey, credit to the New Jersey Devils who have locked him up to a long-term deal. He's making under $8 million through 2031, but he's always kind of been second fiddle in New Jersey, even third, right? It's like, okay, there's Jack Hughes, there's Nico Hischier. And this year, with Hughes missing a lot of time once again, you look at Bratt and it's like back-to-back 80-point seasons. This year, he's going to step into that 90-plus point range. And he's just a guy who I think gets forgotten about a little bit, and he produces a ton. You look at his last 4 years, 73, 73, 83, 88. I don't think this is a player who you can sit and look at anymore and go, well, he just benefits from playing with a Hischier or a Hughes, or it was just a good year or two and he'll plateau off. Like, he's continuing to take steps forward, and I think he might be taking the mantle of like the most underappreciated player in the league.
Yeah, again, I agree with you completely, Ty. I think the fact of the matter is when we think about the New Jersey Devils, you think about Hughes and Hischier and the different players that go with it, but he hasn't had that supporting cat necessarily during this run, right? He is a guy that is an independent thinker, and he makes great plays out there. His creativity in the offensive zone is undeniable. And again, I think he's finding more of a well-rounded game. And I don't know if that is the fact of Sheldon Keefe or just general what Fitzgerald has built there, but he seems like a deeper player in meaning of like early in his career, I didn't like the way he played in the defensive zone. I spent a lot of time playing against him. He was always great offensively. He had that water bug mentality where you couldn't hit him. He was always creating, and now he's settled into where he needs to be. And again, I don't like the Devils coming into the playoff series. I think they're limping in when you talk about playoffs. But that being said, I think Jesper Bratt has done well, and that is a great signing now when we look at the numbers that he's putting up. And I don't see that stopping. I see him continually produce as the Devils get healthy moving forward.
Let's flip this conversation around now and talk a little bit about some guys who maybe saw their stock plummet over the last 82 games or over the last 8 months here. And I got a few, like Elias Pettersson is the really easy one. It's easy to throw shade on EP40. And listen, the Canucks have a big decision to make. We don't need to talk more about Pettersson. Maybe we'll get into the Canucks tomorrow. But a couple of other veterans here, one of them being Chris Kreider, who I saw Rangers fans before we even got to this topic. They're already trading him to Utah in our chat. They can't wait to get rid of Chris Kreider this summer. But the other guy I had on there that I kind of want to have a conversation about is Roman Josi, who had, again, some injury problems this year. It caused his numbers to plummet. And yes, he's 1 year removed from an 85-point season. He's 3 years removed now from his 96-point season. And he's 34. He's a truly elite player, and I get it. And maybe this is just a blip this year, and maybe Nashville just wasn't that good of a team, and I'm reading too much into one bad season. But sometimes I feel like we look at the Ovies and the Crosbys and we go, look, every superstar player can play into their late 30s and continue to be the stars that they are. And I look at Josi at 34, and there's just a little part of me. It's not a big down, but it's just a little trend down. I'm going, has Nashville maybe already seen the best of Josi, and is he maybe not going to be a guy who can pull them out of this tough season?
Yeah, it might be. The fact of the matter is, some guys age differently too, Ty. And I feel like this is something I dealt with when I retired, right? People be like, well, why did you quit playing? I was 36 years old. And I feel like sometimes you look at players, I was barely good enough to be there when I was in my prime. You fight and you battle, and how hard it is to compete every single night. And people see Ovechkin and they see Crosby and they see these guys that are ageless wonders and Marc-Andre Fleury, where sometimes it has a different effect on people. But I think for Roman Josi, there's still value there. And I think, again, him being back to 100% and a little bit of health, and he's had a lot of hard miles on his body, right? And again, this is a team that traded Shea Weber away, so nothing is up for grabs here. You never know what could happen moving forward. But I think Roman Josi is a little bit of a step back, especially in the way that he plays, his skating, his mobility. It's going to slow down. Time, nobody beats time, no matter what. But I still think I look for a bounce back season from him. And yes, him being out, I like the fact that they just never brought him back, because I know he was close. I had a chance to talk to him when I was in Nashville on the Leafs morning take trip, is to see where he gets now with a little bit of an extended break, a little bit of a reset, just for your body, for your mind, coming back next season. But I don't want to sell that stock just yet, but I'm with you, though. Time catches up with everybody.
Yeah, and you look at that Nashville team and the ages of some of those guys. They're 4 highest paid forwards. Forsberg at 30, Stamkos 35, Marchessault 34, O'Reilly 34. Then you go to the blue line. It's Brady Shea at 31 and Roman Josi at 34. Like, it's not like these guys are sitting here still in the middle of their primes. They're kind of, to use a golf reference, heading towards, we'll call it the 14th or 15th hole here in their careers. And on that Nashville note, it actually does tie in nicely to our big segment. The Blue Paint for today brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. You can apply for a Charm Diamond Flexity card today and get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. All right, Huts, we're doing the same exercise, but on the goaltending front. And I guess it is a good transition to start in Nashville, where you have Juuse Saros as one of those guys who's maybe a little bit on the decline. And Huts, he hasn't even seen his $7.7 million extension kick in yet.
I know. It's a little worrisome for me. The fact of the matter is he is a backbone there, and you trade Askarov away, he becomes your guy. And look at his save percentage at .895. It's disappointing for a guy who had a career .914 save percentage, and he's had a lot of wins, and it's been a little slow progress, right? He was a .906 last year, .919, .918, and he plays a ton of minutes. He's a valuable goalie. But that being said, he is undersized. So everything that you lose being a little bit smaller, you have to make up in speed, skill, edge work, and being perfect in all other facets. Where this year, I just felt like it was a big step down. Again, I think it's a product of the team, but I look for him to have a lot of pressure on him going into next season, because if this continues, there's going to be a dynamite that goes off in Nashville where they start moving pieces out, something that I don't really love to see, because I'm very fond of Juuse Saros and the Nashville Predators, Ty.
Speaking of big extensions, Jeremy Swayman, obviously it was a big story coming into the year. He missed a lot of training camp. When you look at Swayman, 26 years old, how much of this bad season do you think is maybe just bad luck? How much of it is, hey, he didn't start on time, losing training camp can really set a guy back? Like, what did you make of Swayman's step back this season?
I think it's a bit of everything, Ty. I look at Linus Ullmark getting moved out and being anointed to having the keys to the castle. And I've been in that situation before where someone gets hurt or you become the guy. Everything changes, because now all of a sudden, instead of playing 2 games a week, you're playing 3 or 4, and the wear and tear that goes on in the season. I think he got behind the 8 ball, truthfully, for me, with the whole training count and holdout situation. So again, I think the Bruins were due for a little self-destruct, and I still find it weird looking at the standings and seeing the Bruins at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. It just seems weird to me. But that being said, Swayman needs to be better, right? Again, an .895 save percentage. And this is a guy who over his career has been rock solid, right? We look at his record and what he's done for this team, even his playoff success. He needs to be a backbone. When you're paid that kind of money as a goaltender, you need to be a difference maker continually every single night. And he wasn't this year at all. So I look for him stock to go down this summer. But again, there's a lot of pressure because he's still got 7 years left on that big deal.
So both him and Saros, 7 years remaining, and not exactly a linear comparison here because Saros is 29 and Swayman is currently 26. But is there one of those two you think has a better shot at bouncing back next year?
For me, I think it's Swayman, truthfully. I think he's a higher end goalie. Again, I just worry about Saros' size and the way that they defend on like an aging Nashville team when you talk about those guys and their picks, because he just has to move so much more to be perfect, right? I know sometimes size isn't necessarily an advantage, but when you're smaller, you need to do so much more work to be perfect. And again, he's played a ton of minutes over his career, right? Again, I think they need to go and find someone that can help him and complement him where they can get maybe a 1A, 1B situation to protect Saros a little bit more.
All right, let's end this segment on a positive note here. Let's give some goalies some love. And Darcy Kuemper, 34 years old. He had a really bad year in Washington. They move him in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, and all of a sudden, he's bounced back. He's found the fountain of youth back where he started his career with the LA Kings. Huts, Darcy Kemper's bounce back. What's impressed you the most about it?
I think just his poise, right? There's a lot that goes on with a goalie when, especially when you get older and you have a family and you have kids and you have to move across the country. And he had a stint with LA before where he's done well. There's familiarity there. But that being said, he was kind of written off last year. It got to the point where he was a liability being played. Like Charlie Lindgren did such a great job. And again, I was going to have Logan Thompson on here, but he's already had his flowers and he's got his contract. For Darcy Kuemper, he's at a point in his career. If he has another bad year, this could be the end of it. This could be the end of it. You're on the outside looking in. And to have a .922 save percentage and to have 28-11 record, the record he has at home, he's been a staple for this LA Kings team. And I think it's been important to say that he's been one of the biggest difference makers for this team. And the fact that he's re-evolved his game, he doesn't wow you by any means. But the mental capacity to play in big moments and be there still for Darcy Kuemper, it's been very impressive for me to watch this year, Ty.
And last one, you see him on the screen right there, Anthony Stolarz. And listen, he's appeared in, I think it's close to 40 games now, or it's right just over 30. But this is a guy who'd never really taken the reins as a starter in his career. The Leafs have some faith in him. They give him a pretty decent contract, and he delivers, putting up some great numbers. Is this a good year, or do you think Stolarz has, let's call it, long-term starter potential?
I do believe this is long-term for Stolarz, right? My worry about him is I don't think he ever becomes that 55, 60 game guy consistently, but he can be a difference maker. His size and poise, we saw it last night against Tampa Bay. He was so good. You look at that overtime, he made a few big saves. His reads are well. And what I really like about Anthony Stolarz is we talk about this a lot is he communicates well with his teammates. He has that maturity. And I feel like he's going to take on this challenge because when we look at the East, there's going to be some big head-to-head matchups for him, right? We talk about Linus Ullmark possibly in the first round. And then from there, you're going to have Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky. So last night, just even getting that win and, kind of extending your leash in the sense of your confidence and where you're at, helping this team get to the top of the standings is so important, especially for a guy that was a career backup at this point. He's really flourished in a market where there is a lot of pressure, but I think he's ready to handle it. It's been a great signing so far for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Sticking with the sort of stock market theme here, we'll call this question the penny stocks. A few guys heading into the summer who they do not have a ton of value and they are going to be available, whether it's through a buyout or whatever. You have a guy like Philip Grubauer in Seattle, who again, expectation is they probably buy him out. Tristan Jarry, same boat in Pittsburgh. Maybe even a few options. We can throw Alexander Georgiev pending UFA into this mix. Peter Mrazek has had a really tough year in Detroit. Odds are they might buy him out or be willing to keep some money to move off from him in the summer. Out of those players are $1 million, and he's the 1B or the backup to a good young goalie. Like, I think about him and listen, he spent a lot of time in Alberta in his junior hockey days, but like, what if you threw him behind Dustin Wolf next season in Calgary and you were like, hey, we know we can lean to you every, few weeks or every week for a spot start, but your new job, your new chapter in your career is to be a good mentor for Dustin Wolf.
Yeah, and I think there's value there, right? It depends on his character outside the room because that is something that's so important too. And again, I think something in extended my career is like, we'd rather have the devil, right? Like, let's get Carter because we know that what he handles off the rink is so important and never undermining the success of the younger guy. But that being said, at the end of the day, the number one thing is competing and playing well in the net. And I think he brings value there. And again, if something was to happen or Dustin Wolf has a tough stretch or an injury, he can carry the mail and keep you in that playoff hunt. And I think that adds so much value to Tristan Jarry when I look at him moving forward into next season.
Terrific insight. That'll do it for the Blue Paint, brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Moving along to our Ask DFO question, just looking in the YouTube, and Brian made a comment about the Roman Josi thing, and I maybe just want to add a little bit more to what I was saying. Like, I don't think Roman Josi is like a number 5 defenseman. I don't think he ever will be. I think as long as he is playing, he provides value. My point was just kind of like, he was a game changer for a couple of years. He was a driver. He was that Predators team's MVP, and I just think if the expectation is at 35 next season, he's just going to flip the switch and go back to it when he's healthy. I don't think he ever gets back to that level. Could he still be a great number 2, an elite 3, or whatever? Yes, absolutely. I am by no means saying Roman Josi is cooked. I'm just saying it's just keep an eye on that. And if you're a Preds fan going, well, it'll be fine next year because Roman Josi will bounce back. I don't know what that bounce back looks like. I don't know what the ceiling of it is.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong saying that too, right? Again, I think if he's healthy, he still is a driver. He can do that. But to be a game-changing player like he has for years, being the Preds' best player, at some point that's going to start to slow down. It is worrisome. And the main thing is having his health. So I think this is a great job by the Preds, making sure he's done, getting him healthy to see where next year brings.
One on the inbox for you. I think for a while there, everyone was just looking at the Blues being like, you don't want to play the Blues in round 1. But after seeing what Minnesota did last night and just basically seeing that they're healthy, if you were Winnipeg and you could pick your opponent, would you rather play the Blues or the Wild in round 1?
I think you'd rather play the Blues, truthfully. I know, again, I just think with those two bodies back, they add such a different dynamic to this Minnesota Wild, right? Kaprizov and Eriksson, they just add value, slotting, and they make it harder on your best players, right, all game long. And that being said, they've always defended very well, and Philip Gustafsson is very, very good, especially if he gets hot. I think there's value there. And the St. Louis Blues, again, I don't think that this is just a push-off, right? They've played a lot of good hockey. I think Jim Montgomery has got them there. But that being said, without Colton Parayko in the lineup and a little bit of that, you even saw Binnington last night. It looks like a little crack in the armor, right? Corey Perry goes to the net. He erupts. You talk about a 7-game series. They're going to make it hard on you. They're going to be going to the net. They're going to try to get to him. So that being said, Winnipeg, I don't know if you want to pick your poison here because either game is going to be tough, but I think I'd be going with the St. Louis Blues right now.
Big game tonight between the Winnipeg Jets and Dallas Stars, by the way. Winnipeg can all but lock up top spot in the conference with a win over Dallas, a loss, and all of a sudden it's just a 2-point gap with 3 points remaining for each team. And Winnipeg it still likely would hold the tiebreaker, which is big this time of year, but still massive game tonight between the Jets and Stars. Jets actually underdogs in that one, which ties in nicely to our Bet365 daily bets. Breaking news from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner and every suspenseful moment in between is amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app. Use the code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. And I don't love touching either side of that Winnipeg-Dallas game. If I had to lean, maybe the Jets as underdogs in that one, considering Dallas just blew a big lead the other day. Winnipeg's coming off a win. But the one game I do like tonight is LA to take down Anaheim. Anaheim played last night, and I know they kind of saved Lucas Dostal for this game against the LA Kings, but the Kings have been dynamite at Crypto.com Arena this year. They have only lost 9 times in 37 home games. They're coming off a loss. I don't think they lose 2 in a row. I like the LA Kings on the puck line here tonight. Hutz, have you started doing your research for tonight's slate? Anything you like?
No, I do like the Jets as underdogs tonight. I think this is a big game for them. I do think that is a game that's going to be somewhere they can really extend themselves. And again, I would like Vegas in regulation against Seattle. I think there's a fork. They're done. I feel like Seattle's cooked. And I feel like Vegas has kind of been that whitewash team that hasn't really found their identity yet. And I think with this last little run here, they really need to get to that playoff hockey quickly. Because I look at Vegas has been sitting so well. They need to step it up a notch tonight. And I think they squash Seattle pretty quickly tonight.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Actually, a pretty decent plus money or close to plus money payout on the Golden Knights in regulation. To wrap up the show here, some sad news that broke right after we were done yesterday. The passing of Ray Shero. Again, seeing all the tributes come in over the last, call it 23 hours here, 62 years old, gone way too soon, but a guy who was just a hockey man through and through, contributed to a bunch of Stanley Cup teams. It was heartbreaking to hear a guy like Bill Guerin talk about him yesterday as well. And man, I mean, it's been a tough run in the hockey world. It's been a tough week. It's the second time in 4 days we've been wrapping up the show, sending our condolences, but longtime GM and executive Ray Shero gone too soon at 62, Hutz.
Yeah, it's sad. And again, when you see something like this happen in the hockey world, you realize how small it is and how many people that he has helped along the way and grow the game and people. And I think back to myself, different people I've dealt with, throughout my career, and I'm so grateful for. So Ray Shero was great for the NHL, and it's a sad day. So you feel for his family today, and they're in our thoughts.
Yeah, sending our condolences to his friends, family, and everyone who he worked with over his various stops around the NHL. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, Friday edition of the program. Look forward to seeing everybody then. Again, the YouTube acting up this week a little bit. We'll have it sorted out for tomorrow, and we'll see you all at noon Eastern.